and controlled by the people of India. Ladies and gentlemen, this was an excerpt from the United States of India, and in an article published, it was called Inspiration to Patriots of India. It is from the February 1925 issue. This publication was from the Ghadar party. So our next presenter, or our next speaker, Mrs. Aneeta Chakrabarty, is going to talk about that. Chakrabarty, I'm sorry. So she has a BS and MS in physical chemistry. She worked for 3 years for Westinghouse Nuclear Fuel Division. She worked as an analyst for Bell Systems. Now in Houston, she worked for Harris County as an educator, and presently she is doing part-time teaching and tutoring chemistry. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mrs. Aneeta Chakrabarty.
Hello everybody, good afternoon and welcome. Today I'm going to talk to you about a forgotten revolt called the Ghadar Revolution, enacted in 1914 and 1915. The unique thing about this Ghadar revolt is that it was enacted by NRIs like you and me at a time when they were not doing that good. In spite of it, they were able to enact the biggest revolt in NRI history against the most powerful military machine at that time, the British Empire. Today, I'm going to take a few moments of your time to shed light on this momentous revolution and of the outstanding heroes who are no longer with us. Rewind to 1900. The British were everywhere. Their boots were everywhere. Their guns were everywhere. Their laws were everywhere. Their taxes were everywhere. And those taxes, they were bad, very bad. They broke the back of the common man. They destroyed the countryside. People were desperate. They were staring at misery, famine, death, widespread destruction. They had no option but to leave. They were forced to leave. They first went to the nearby places like Shanghai and Hong Kong. And then they heard about the good life in America and Canada. Then migration started from 1900 to 1907. Hindus, Sikhs families, predominantly from the rural Punjab, moved in droves to the coast of the West. It went on from 1900 to 1907. In 1907, something happened. There was a depression. And whenever there's a depression, what happens? The immigrants are the scapegoat. And this time, the Indian immigrants were the most vulnerable because they had no backing. Other immigrants, they had the backing of their governments. But the Indian immigrants had nobody. The British government couldn't care less. In fact, they made matters worse. They spread malicious propaganda that they were the filth of Asia. They were an inferior race. They worshipped demons and ants, and they should be treated as such. This is something the Americans imbibed in their mental space, and that's how they felt they should treat the Indians, just like the British did. I would like to bring on an event that happened at this time. It will give you an idea of the hostility surrounding those people at that time. January 1907, small town called Wilhelm, Oregon. Cold day, cold as cold can be. Americans attacked the Indian immigrants. They assaulted them, beat them up, humiliated them, robbed them, put them and loaded them into tram cars, took them into the middle of an icy nowhere, left them there, hoping that they would die. The traumatized Indians had nobody to turn to except each other. And with the help of each other and with some local help, they managed somehow to reach their base. Many Indians were going through that same plight, and they realized they had nobody but each other. They formed groups, organized themselves, got as much resources as possible, pooled their resources, and then went through some dark days. Meanwhile, the depression ended, and slowly jobs came back. The Indian immigrants found jobs, and it went on. Some of them were so hardworking and succeeded so well that they became actually quite wealthy. There was wealthy farmers and wealthy landowners. This shows how much grit they had. They could survive all the odds. Around this time, they organized themselves, formed different associations. One prominent association was called the Hindustan Association of the Pacific. Things were moving along, Indian Hindu Americans were coasting along, but there was another problem about what was happening in India. It was affecting them. The British were ruling with an iron hand. They were stifling all dissent. And this bothered the Indians, the Hindus, and the Sikh population in America. They decided they had to do something. So they opened an association called the Hindustan Association of the Pacific. It addressed some of these issues in India and in America. There was a simmering discontent. It kept going, increasing day by day as the atrocities in India increased. Once something happened, December 1912. A young teenager, hardly 18 years old, Basant Kumar Biswas, heard a bomb at Lord Viceroy's Victory Parade. It was a failed assassination attempt, but it made the people outside India pour their outrage all over the world. One such gentleman from Stanford, Lala Hardayal, was so outraged that he took matters into his own hands. And he started the Ghadar party. The name of the Ghadar means a revolt. It was essentially a revolt against the British Empire, to bring down the British. That was the motive. Actually, the Hindustan Association of the Pacific was renamed as the Ghadar Party. Now, Lala Hardayal was no ordinary man. He was a learned man with 2 scholarships from Oxford. Possessing a master's degree in Sanskrit and literature, he was fluent in 6 languages, professor at Stanford in Sanskrit and philosophy, brilliant educator, reformer, orator, and was actively involved in the nationalist movement. He had given up his Oxford scholarship and ICS in 1905 to become a revolutionary. He wore many hats. He was involved in the anarchist ideology, was the secretary of the Industrial Workers of a paper called the Ghadar was published. It was wildly popular, spread all over the world, translated to many languages. The Ghadar advocated for independence from the British. It highlighted the injustices. It spread the literature, motivated the people to act in their interest as much as possible, to resist the injustice that was coming down their pike. The entry requirement for the Ghadar party was, you should be willing to die or be martyred. Just imagine, you want to join a party today, you have membership, you have to pay $100 or whatever. But the entry requirement at that time was, you must be willing to face death, martyrdom. How many of us would do that today? Join a party like that? But thousands still joined. So what does that show? It shows the anger, the hostility, the no matter what, we are bringing down the British and we are going to do it, no matter what. Thousands joined. Another incident happened at this time in 1914 called the Komagatu Maru incident. That was the time there was a ship called the Komagatu Maru. It left the shores of Hong Kong, came to Canada with just 400 Indians, only 400 Indians. But they were not allowed to come in. They were forcibly sent back. At the same time, 500,000 refugees from Europe got in. No questions asked, none answered. This blatant, in-your-face racism got the people all riled up. Anger mounted on the streets. And the Ghadar party, their ranks swelled. There was moral, material, and spiritual support. 6,000 Ghadarites were willing to give up all and go and fight for the revolution and get rid of this British. Just imagine 6,000 of us leaving everything, going to nowhere, uncharted territory, martyred, disappeared, dead. They didn't care. So the Ghadar party was very popular. No wonder the British banned the Ghadar weekly, but in spite of it, it reached every nook and corner of India. The goal of the Ghadar party was to break the backbone of the British, which is basically to break the backbone of the Indian army. What that meant was they had to infiltrate the Indian army, get the soldiers disaffected enough to cause a mutiny, and take over. This was the giant plan. It required a lot of organization and planning. The point man, the mover and shaker of this whole enterprise was Lala Hardayal. He organized funds from countries which were not in support, which were against the British, like Japan, Germany, and possibly Turkey. He devised elaborate codes to evade the British. They had penetrating eyes everywhere. They organized themselves, learned how to use arms, ammunition, and also how to make bombs. 1914-1950, World War I was chosen as the time frame to launch the revolution, because at that time the British would be busy, distracted with World War I. There would be only a skeletal army left in India. So this was the most opportune time to launch the revolution. The plan was the 6,000 Ghadarites would go in separate boats to evade detection, land on the shores of India, different places, mingle among the crowd, go to the different army place, spread disaffection among them, enough so that they will mutiny at a coded signal and word. And this was not only in India, it was all over the world, Singapore, Hong Kong, and other places too, wherever the British was ensconced. The British, being so busy with the war, would have no way of putting down the mutiny like they did before. And then after that, it was just a piece of cake. The plan was perfect. It fixed everything regarding the external enemy. But like most things in India, the enemy is always internal, bringing down, smashing whatever was planned. Enemies were there in the Ghadar party, leaked out all the details to the British. The result, Ghadarites landed in the shores, immediately arrested, went through excruciating torture, harassment, and eventually done to death. Many of them were in exile for long periods of time, unheard of. The revolution was brutally crushed. Chanakya said at one time, if a ruler does not possess the power to punish traitors, he is attacked by them. Such was the story of the Ghadarites. And that is a lesson from the Ghadar revolution that we must internalize and learn and be vigilant against. There was also this issue of timing. The whole of India was on a peace march, led by Gandhi, and actually supporting the British. Ghadarites landed sounding the bugle of war. It was like swimming against a giant current, and things did not turn out well. But I wouldn't call Ghadar as a failed revolt. It was just the beginning of the end game. It sounded the first bell that told the end of the British Empire. It blazed a new trail. Thousands of heroes like Bhagat Singh were inspired by it. They rode the freedom road, so India finally got the freedom. It lost the battle, but won the war. That is the lesson we have to learn. Persist, persist, persist until we win. There's a reflection that comes that we can think about the Ghadar revolution. It brings to life two narratives. One is unending. This is not the first time that the Ghadar heroes have, or the Hindu-Sikh diaspora, Hindu-Sikh heroes have moved mountains, stood their ground, and fought injustice against all odds. It has happened many times in the past. We know some of them, like Rani of Jhansi and Shivaji. But there are recent ones which we don't know about. Siachen was won by one man. Kashmir was won by one man. Ladakh held the Pakistani and won for us India, 17-year-old with Abhimanyu-like valor. I don't have to go time to go too much into detail, but I'm just going to go briefly over each one of them. Siachen was shown in the maps of Pakistan. Everybody accepted it. They were supporting mountaineering expeditions, organizing it. For the Japanese, Europeans, and all went to Siachen through Pakistan. So they were like de facto. Possession is 9/10 of the law. It was like a fait accompli. But one man challenged it, Colonel Kumar. He, with a small team, traversed the whole of Siachen using old historical records, meteorological records, records from the British Army, and mapped the whole terrain. It was no easy enterprise. It is the third pole. The ice there, the avalanche, can bury a tank in 1 second. It's minus 60 degrees. Your nose could freeze in less than half a second. The howling winds would make the temperature even much less than minus 60. It was a whole white expanse, the third pole, and he traversed, dauntless, bold, mapped corner to corner, and legally established that this belongs to India. Bold enterprise. Otherwise, we would not have Siachen. Just imagine the Pakis and the Chinese on Siachen on the border. We would be sitting ducks. We would have no freedom. Yet we know nothing about them. Ladakh. The Pakistanis were in almost school in the mouth of Ladakh. A young boy, 17-year-old, Chivang Rinchen, with Abhimanyu-like valor, deterred the Pakistanis for a month and 15 days with a few of his friends until the Gurkha army came to his rescue. Srinagar, almost gone in 1948, because the Indian tanks and army was on one side of the border, Srinagar, Afghans and Pakistanis, and on the other side, very close to Srinagar. In between was the formidable Zojila Pass, 12,000 feet high, frozen half the time. They had to take the tanks to the other side, have the firepower to bow them down. General Timaya had this bright idea, astute military feat he performed. He got the Jawans to disassemble the tanks, made into small pieces. They carried them through the pass, got to the other side, assembled it back, got it in operation in 3 weeks' time, and that's how we got Srinagar. One of the most important battles, one of the most brave battles, the UNESCO lists 8 battles which are the most brave, most powerful. One of them was the Battle of Rezangla. It was fought on the heights 20,000 feet above the sea level. Oxygen was rare. The Chinese were at the door in 1962, Chushu, Ladakh. They were ill-equipped. They had no boots. It was frostbitten. The food was hard, stone hard. The machine gun jammed. There was 120 of them, waves and waves of Chinese coming. They knew it was certain death. The major told them, you can leave, but nobody left. They stayed. And they fought so fiercely that the Chinese stopped in their tracks. It changed the course of the war. And within 3 days, there was a ceasefire. So we have this long history of heroes, and we still have these heroes going on. And of course, we have this other narrative of traitors, accusers, quislings, and their bundle of rogues who are bent on looting the people, who snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, and they are also there in the narrative. One is represents Gita in action. Gita is not in any book. It's there in action, fighting injustice, standing tall, being ever vigilant. Then, of course, there is the quizzers represent the Gita in retreat, selling your soul to the highest bidder, using the mantra of peace to look the other way, living on your knees, living in denial, head in the sand. One is standing tall, one is living on your knees. Which would you choose? Of course, we have to remember and reclaim the legacy of the heroes of being ever vigilant and ever fighting for justice. This is the event. This is the legacy we must know, remember, internalize, empower, and pass it on. Because awareness and vigilance, they are like oxygen to society. They lead to knowledge. Knowledge is power. Power breeds confidence. Confidence breeds strategy. Strategy is the blueprint for success anywhere, anytime in the world, whether in war, in peace, or to remove ideological toxins from the body of society, and of course, to finish off the traitors. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, as the saying goes. Ladies and gentlemen, the heroes are all gone. The Ghadar heroes are no more. Their bodies smashed. Their ashes strewn through time. But we all can still do something. We can remember them. We can remember their legacy. We can give them an opportunity to live in your minds, in your hearts, in your soul. Let their legacy enshrine your lives forever and forever. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, for this one time, do you guys have any questions?